Welcome to Dodgers Daily. Casey Porter here. So glad that you decided to tune in. Fans, today we have a very, very, very special guest. I still say it was the steal of the 2021 draft in the 10th round, all-time saves leader from St. Mary's, and possibly the most competitive human being I have ever watched pitch, Michael Hobbs, better known as Hobbsy, joins. Hey, thank you so much, Hobbsy.
How's it going, man? Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, awesome deal. Awesome deal. So the stash game, I'm going to start right there, okay? Got to know all the story behind it and all the philosophies and like the game plan behind it.
So there's really not much to it, man. It's probably been like a year and a half now since I started growing it out, but I was like, you know what, I'm just going to try it out. And it really got to the point where I put it enough times where I was like, you know what, man, I'm just going to like keep going and see if I end up liking it. And so I have, and now, you know, it actually last offseason I was talking to my girlfriend about it, you know, like, hey, I'm thinking about cutting it. And she was like, no, don't do it. And so here we are. Stash is still going.
Yeah, now that you know the Betancourt's not in the system, you know you're number one in the stash game for the Dodgers, right?
That's what I've heard.
Yeah.
That's what I've heard.
Yeah, so you need to cut it off and cut all your facial hair and then show up at spring training and just write down how many of the coaches in the system don't recognize you.
I know, yeah. My guess would be there'd be a good amount.
Yeah. Okay, 2.97 ERA. Your average against last year was 2.16. What an awesome year you had. I know the team struggled a little bit, but, well, you had an awesome individual year, didn't you?
I appreciate that. Yeah, there was, you know, obviously just like everyone else, there's some stuff, you know, I still got to address. But yeah, you know, overall, especially on that front, like I'm definitely very pleased with that.
So one of the things that I really enjoy watching, just kind of the nitty gritty of the way that you do things, is that you have a breaking pitch that you label as being slurvy, but it's definitely listed as a slider. And the reason why you can say that is because you can add and subtract to it based on the count. So talk about that pitch, how you use it, and how that's become such a weapon for you.
Yeah, it's been really good. Like, especially like opposite sided hitters, like lefties for me, having a pitch, you know, that's more depth front to back is huge. And yeah, it just depends. I've played with it a little bit. As the year went on, I kind of turned it into more of a sweeper a little bit, but because it's such a high slot, like especially from the camera angle behind, it's depth. It looks like it has depth.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been awesome for me, man. It's just figuring out how to manage it the best. Like what counts is it best in? Where's it going to perform? All that sort of thing. But it's been good for me.
Can you take us through your whole mix?
Sure. Yeah. So I have a four seam, sinker, cutter, and now as of late sweeper. The four seam is a little cutty, like towards my glove side.
Yeah.
The sinker it doesn't have like a crazy bunch of depth, but it's different from the four seam just because it has that arm side action. And the cutter, like we talked about before, is actually more kind of bullet slider, like gyro, tight, harder. And the sweeper it's still kind of a work in progress a little bit. But I'm just like, everything I throw is basically going to my glove side. So it wasn't like super hard to get it to move that way, but playing with the depth part of it is a little bit difficult. So yeah, those are the four pitches.
Yeah. And looking at the way that you use those pitches, do you use that two seam to go in on a righty and the bullet slider to go on the lefty? That seemed like a pretty common way that Dodgers in the minor leagues attacked hitters last year.
Yeah, no doubt. A lot of what you'll see too, like not just in our org, but like kind of across the map, is depth is normally going to play more to the opposite side. So like a righty going against a lefty hitter, generally to punch is going to, you know, go with their option that has depth. If I'm going same sided hitter, it's usually going to be either, you know, depending on the guy, it's going to be something that's more horizontal moving, or something that's tighter and harder. It just kind of depends with what pairs up with your stuff the best. So
I've got to ask you then, with all that big bunch of mix, I mean, usually you're only coming in for one inning at a time. You have done the up down where you threw more than 3 outs at a time. But how do you get to all of that stuff and get the feel for all of it in that short of amount of a time?
It's tough, man. Like that's really the hardest part about just being a reliever in general is you know, we can talk about all these ways that, you know, we have to attack hitters, but a lot of times not all that's there.
Yeah.
Most of the time, honestly, like there's rarely times where you're going out with like everything available on your tool belt. Like it's just really not happening very often. So honestly, a lot of times you don't, like you said, unless you have like an up down situation, you kind of just get a feel for like what's your, you know, what your best is, and you go and attack it. And, you know, there's opportunities where, you know, you can show some different stuff, but like you said, you know, if I only have 20 pitches to work with within 4 or 5 outs, even in like an up down situation, there's not a lot that I can get to. And it just comes down to like using your best stuff really as much as you can.
Yeah. So, you know, I saw your big slider all the way back at St. Mary's, or I guess you're calling it a sweeper now. And then when you're at Great Lakes, I mean, it's just a devastating pitch. But I kept thinking, okay, well, as you move up levels, it'll be interesting to see if, as hitters get more selective, how that will play. So how has that been for you?
It's been good. I'll definitely say the level change, like there's definitely something to that. So guys are more selective, just like you said. The other thing is, you know, going back to what I was saying earlier about using your best a lot, you know, hitters have all that information.
Yeah.
So there's no secret that what you're throwing, like, you know, what you're throwing in certain counts is probably going to happen in this outing. You know, so there was definitely a little bit of an adjustment in kind of the attack plan. And, you know, guys spit on stuff a lot easier, and, you know, stuff that might have been a strike in Great Lakes isn't a strike anymore. So the counts are moving a little bit differently. So it was difficult, but just like anything else, like, you know, over time, especially with level changes and stuff, you kind of start to get the feel, get the hang of it.
What was it like throwing to Diego and Dalton Rushing, two totally opposite personalities? Diego, both very competitive. They get to the same competitive element at the same place there, but Diego's way more laid back, way more chill. Dalton's a lot more in your face. What was that like?
It was awesome, man. Both of those guys are awesome behind the plate. I think one of the things sometimes that can kind of get swept under the rug is, one, the ability to throw guys out. I mean, these guys have it's ridiculous sometimes, you know, like there will be a ball in the dirt that they pick and they figure out a way to go out there and still put it on the bag at second or wherever it is. And as well as that, just the ability to manage a game, especially in, you know, the minor leagues. We might have 2 different starters going. We might have to essentially run a bullpen game if our starter hits pitch count early, stuff like that. So it's a lot, man. And these guys also have to worry about hitting, and, you know, there's other little things like that pitch clock, especially, you know, cause there's times where umpires don't necessarily enforce it the right way. And I've asked a bunch of questions about the rules and stuff, but like one of the big things is, you know, when someone hits a long fly, or one of the catchers hits a long fly, and they're essentially almost touching second, they got to come back in, put all their stuff on, you know, get the game plan for the next couple guys. And then, you know, they're like almost out of breath by the time the inning starts. So, again, that just kind of goes to both those guys' personality and their ability to kind of like lock it in when they need to behind the plate. But it's awesome to say the least.
Hey, you're in the off season now. Tell us where you're at, what you're doing, what your goals are, maybe some adjustments you're trying to make.
Yeah, so I'm out here in Arizona. I'm training at Camelback,
Nice.
and we're kind of like in the middle of our throwing program. So we haven't touched the mound yet. We're kind of starting to stretch it out a little bit more, getting a little closer to that time. In terms of adjustments, I think there's some, you know, just some small tweaks mechanically that I'm trying to push towards to kind of see a little bit more of an uptick in velocity. And those are really the biggest things for me is that, and the strength and medical as well, just trying to keep my body in a spot where I'm going to be able to perform for 130, 160 plus games.
Yeah. What was your sit velos last year? Do you know?
I think my average on the year was 93.8.
Yeah, that's good.
Which sometimes can get a little skewed. Like, there might be times where people think it would be harder, but like the numbers people see, like in the on the scoreboard and all that stuff, those are all rounded numbers.
Yes, right.
So we're getting like the pure value of the number. So that's kind of like where that comes from a little bit. But yeah, I think it was 93.8 on the year.
So where would you like to sit someday if you had your choice?
I mean, I think especially when you're comparing, and everybody's different, man, but like when you compare it to our org, a lot of our relievers are sitting around that 95-ish range. And that's just like the reality of it. And so I think the closer I can get to that is also going to bring the ceiling up of all the breaking pitches as well. And so essentially that's where I would like to be, but just as close to that as I can get.
So the competitive element, the competitive fire, I gotta know the sauce, man. You need to bottle that one up and send that one my way. Where did that come from?
Man, I think it really probably dates back to high school. Like honestly, when I was a freshman and I had guys that kind of like took me under their wing. I saw like an old friend this weekend, Tristan Beck. He's in the big leagues with the Giants right now. He's from Corona High. Another one of my buddies, Seth Kaneen. Like those are two guys that like took me under their wing and kind of like showed me, everything, like how to do it. So honestly, that's where I think it kind of comes from, as well as my head coach at Corona High, Andy Wise. Those guys like, show me the ropes and like essentially what it takes to, be a dog when you're on the mound. So I'd give it up to those guys for that. You
love those adrenaline rushes, don't you?
No doubt.
Yeah. So it had to be really cool because you played in college at St. Mary's with Chris Campos. He actually was basically he was your shortstop back then. He didn't pitch a whole lot, if any, much at all at St. Mary's. And you got to play with him at AA Tulsa this year, which had to be very cool. So first of all, talk about that. And did you get to close any of his starts? That would have been cool too.
I don't know. I don't remember closing any of his starts, but I remember I came in. I think it was his first outing I came in. I think it was a rough one too. I don't think I had a good day, but he did. Like he came in and shoved.
Yeah.
But yeah, playing with him is awesome, man. It's cool. Like, understanding where he was at in college, like you said, like primary shortstop, came out of the pen, stuff was really good, but like we really needed him in the field, to now like having really good stuff and watching it perform at this level, especially with how young he is really cool.
Yeah. So this is the question of business, but the Rule 5 draft, you're eligible for that. And so does that play anything? I mean, is that something you ever think about, or is that just out of sight, out of mind? I'm not going to worry about it because I can't control it.
Yeah. I mean, I'd be lying if I said, it doesn't get thought about, but at the same time, like I'm a big believer in just like really being where your feet are, man. Like those decisions are completely out of my control and I can't do anything. So it's not even worth, sitting here and hoping for or not hoping for, or, however people see it. But yeah, you're right. Like there's a business kind of aspect to it, which I know a decent amount, but like I'm not, I'm not super up to par with all of it. But yeah, that's kind of it.
Okay. So tell us what you're doing right now, in your opinion, that is good enough to be a consistent major leaguer. What things do you think you need to work on the most moving forward?
In terms of being a consistent major, I think my ability to spin the ball in zone, and push it out of zone when I need to is good enough to perform at that level. I think, back to the velocity part, and not only that, but just the usage. Like guys are starting to get a little comfortable because, especially righties, like you are going to see spin away from you at some point. So that bat just kind of gets to become a little bit easier. So going into next season, like I said, as well as the velocity, I want to bring that fastball usage up, just so it's a little more of a mix, like throwing in fastballs in spots that, aren't normally supposed to be thrown. Like I was, and until the end of the year, essentially like all my 2-strike stuff to righties was going to be spin. So you could sit on the big one and you can sit on the smaller, tighter one. and you're probably going to have a good chance to put it in play. And so just going into next year, bringing that fastball usage up so it kind of lets everything play a little better off of it.
Yeah. Okay, man, that's all the business I got for you. We mentioned neither one of us are huge on that side of it. So let's get to some fun questions. You ready?
All right.
Okay, I already asked you about your mustache and Betancourt and all that, so I'm going to go straight to the next question. And that is, as far as any of the saves that you had in college there at St. Mary's, I know you had a couple of big ones there at Great Lakes and then last year as well. What is the most amount of adrenaline that you can ever remember having on the mound?
The most amount, I would say, let's see. There was a save my senior year at Pepperdine.
Oh,
that was a really big spot. It's got to be between that and probably there was a outing, I believe it was last year, at Dayton.
Yeah.
That was I don't remember if it was.
They were jaw jacking with you.
What's that?
The fans were jaw jacking with you.
Yeah,
and you gave them a big burger.
Yeah, and it had to be between those two. But yeah, I was fired up for those.
Okay, you're from Corona, California, so did not grow up with crazy weather. What's the craziest weather event you can remember, either at Great Lakes or at Tulsa?
I mean, Tulsa this year, especially like in the beginning, we just had like a good amount of like rain problems. That wasn't too bad. Honestly, I think the cold in Michigan is really like the most difficult thing. And, that cold really only lasts for a few weeks, at the beginning of the season. But it's tough, man. Like, and not only that, we're coming from Arizona, at the time. So it's a drastic jump. Yeah. But yeah, I think that's probably, I would say Michigan, just like early beginning part of the year is probably the most difficult.
You a big golfer?
Honestly, not really, man. I tried picking it up, and I just cannot figure out my swing. I definitely need to put some more time in because all my buddies do it, and it pisses me off because I just don't want to spend $75 on a round, and not have a good time, And I know that's part of it, but I'm really not right now. Dude,
you're a professional pitcher, man. You got to have a golf game, right?
I know that, and that's where I'm at. Like the past couple of years, all these guys on their off days are going to golf. And I'm like, man, I really need to pick it up. But
okay, you mentioned that you're not great at it yet, but you have to have at least one of your best shots that you can remember that you ever hit on a golf course.
So it's funny. I've never so in high school, I never practiced, and I just went out and played a couple times with some buddies. I've never parred a hole, but I've birdied before at a par 4. So that's like the only good shot essentially that I've probably ever hit on the golf course.
All right, Clubhouse, you have a rain out going on. Are you a cards guy, a video game guy, or ping pong or pool?
If there's a ping pong table there, I'll definitely be playing ping pong, but if not, it'll be cards.
Are we a topspin guy where you're trying to kill everything, or you guy that just throws it back and hope they make a mistake?
I'm a little bit of both, man. I got like my bag's kind of deep. I got some top spin, some back spin. I think I'm definitely more of the aggressor versus like the kind of just put it back on their side.
Yeah, I can't imagine you being a guy who just lobs it back. You're a guy who's going to be going for the kill for everything.
Yeah,
right? So,
definitely.
hey, I asked this question to Bubba Aline whenever I talk to him. Hey, we all love baseball. We love being at the yard every day, but we also love rainouts too. So what is I'm going to ask you the over-under on the amount of time it takes the clubhouse to empty out after you realize that you have a rainout for that night.
Oh, it's pretty quick, man. It's quick. And honestly, it just kind of depends on how long it takes. If everyone's sitting there for a while and like we're getting cold and stuff, like as soon as it's over, guys are jumping in the shower and they're getting out of there. Honestly, like if we've been waiting there for that long, it's just the fact that we have that extra hour or two, during the night that we normally don't get. So I think that's kind of where it comes from. But I don't know. I'd probably put it at 15 to 20 minutes or so, something like that.
Interesting. He said 17 minutes. He said he's taking the under.
Yeah.
How cool was it to see your manager get promoted to AAA, Henny?
It was awesome, man. It was awesome. Obviously, that's well deserved. And if you talk to anyone in the org, I'm sure you get a pretty good consensus on what people think of him as a manager. He's a gamer. He knows the game well. He knows how to handle his club, like in the clubhouse, on the field, all that sort of stuff. So it's awesome to see him get that promotion, and I wish him all the success in the world.
Michael Hobbs, you're close, my man. You're close.
Yeah.
How do you keep those thoughts out of your head? Like, oh my God, like Robleski just went straight up. Grove just went straight up. Emmett Sheehan, it didn't take him very long. Ben Kasparius and all these stories. I mean, how do you keep your mind from wandering?
It's tough, man. Honestly, I think it's good sometimes, because I think we can get a little lost more in the fact that it feels far.
Yeah.
Especially when guys are out of place for a while or a couple years. And then, like Robo's my roommate this year, and he leaves, and basically a month later he's pitching in the big leagues. And, so it's a cool feeling, man. Like, knowing the level that you're at, if you perform a certain way, like you really have a shot, like on the big stage. So, I love it, man. It's cool to see guys go up there and perform, and then you also have in the back of your mind, like, hey man, like that could be me as long as I keep doing whatever X, Y, and Z.
Hobbsy, I enjoy watching you pitch every single time that you take the bump. I tell you all the time, you're one of my favorites to watch, just because of just the awesome competitive nature. So thank you so much for joining Dodgers Daily for the second time, and hopefully this isn't the last time we talk, my man.
Thank you. I appreciate it a lot.